Hi, Ren.
Hey, Manbir.
How are you this afternoon, right? Afternoon for you.
Yes, it's afternoon New Zealand time. Very sunny here in Auckland. Really warm. So thank goodness. Still have a lot of summer.
I can see sun behind you. Thank you so much for joining me, Ren, today on Growth Mindset Conversations. And I would request everyone who are watching us live, if you can write in the comment box so that I will know that whether we are actually live, you can see us. So that will help us to know. And yeah. Then just give me a second. I'll just take a second to see the comments and make sure that we are actually live. So cool. So now we have got the comment that yes, we are live. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ren. Welcome everyone to 28th episode of Growth Mindset Conversations. And let me introduce to all of you our special guest today, Ren Segul. Ren, that is how you pronounce your name, right?
Yeah,
Segul.
perfect. Perfect, Manbir.
Okay. Okay, so Ren Seguel is a sales and leadership coach who helps sales leaders and their teams develop personal mastery, powerful communication skills, and build trusted relationships and strategies to boost the sales performance of high value clients. She enjoyed a 27-year global sales career in high technology companies such as Globe Telecom, Alcatel Lucent, Ruckus Wireless, and Vodafone. And Ren is a great friend. Thank you so much, Ren, for being there every time I need you. Thank you so much for being there on this show.
Thanks, Manbir, and thanks for the introduction. So excited to be here. And, I'm a fan of yours. You're my mentor. So it's quite mutual. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks to all of you who are joining us live. You can write in your questions and comments in the comment box, on whichever medium you are watching us, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. In the comment box, if you write your questions and comments, I can see them. And it will definitely be awesome to know your views on the subject because I believe, Ren, I hope you agree with me, there are no single view on any subject, right? Everyone will have different views, and it'll be great to know your views also on the subject. And Ren is, of course, sharing her view.
Yeah, totally. I love engagement, like as I've said, we always need to be confident but with humility about what we know and what we understand, right? So love to hear everyone's
Absolutely.
view as well.
Cool. So let's start on Ren, how to think strategically at a CXO. And before we come to the topic for the day, the first question of the show goes like, what is growth mindset for Ren Seguel?
Yeah, so growth mindset, I think that meaning has really evolved for me, Manbir, and
Mm-hmm.
personally because of the situations that where we are at. So for me now, a growth mindset is the capability to be in a very willingly to be in a difficult position or difficult place and still believe that it's a good place to be because you're growing,
Mm-hmm.
you're learning, and it might seem like a bit of a failure for some people and for yourself,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
whether you like it or not, you're actually growing. And
Yeah.
it's tough because you can actually choose to be in a place where you're great at everything. But guess what?
Mm.
You're not actually growing. You're
Yeah.
stuck. So,
Absolutely.
so that's a growth mindset for me. And I actually have this if you don't mind, and I actually have this conversation with my daughter a
Mm-hmm.
couple of
Sure.
weeks ago, right? Because she knows she's an athlete. She plays Division One tennis in the U.S. She's in one of the Power Five, conferences, and she was I could say a more prolific tennis player when she was in New Zealand. She was a number one junior. She was playing for the Australian Grand Slam qualifying, and everything was good, right? Like she wins a lot. And then she went to
Mm-hmm.
she went to the US for college tennis and she realized, oh my God, I am actually not that good. so
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she's like, and there's this conversation that we have, and I said, you know what, there's several things that you can do. You can either go back to New Zealand, you know play tennis, win all
Mm-hmm.
the time but never grow, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have a scholarship, or you can go to a lower level of division in the US. Either way, but she realized, okay, this is where I want to be. So I think that's a perfect example, right? And for an 18-year
Yeah.
old to have
Yeah.
this, it's
Yeah.
really, really tough, getting beaten every day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, that's my
Yeah.
definition of a growth mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the word you used was willingly. I think willingly is a very powerful word. And thank you so much for sharing your daughter's example. And it's great example to have growth mindset.
Totally,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. So coming back to today's topic, how to think strategically as a CXO. So I'm not going into how to think, what is thinking strategically and all that. I think a lot of people know about it. What are some of the ways that can help leaders think strategically?
Yeah, good. Like, that's a really great question. And thanks for clarifying that, right? I also want to say that I have a lot of respect for CEOs and C levels. And, they're in the best position to be great leaders. And that's why they always want, and these are my coaching experience as well. So we always talk about
Yeah.
it. Like, we always talk about how to be strategic, right? And it's interesting because if I step back a bit, one of the challenges of being in this level is you're doing business as usual, right? It's the immediate,
Mm-hmm.
now you're firefighting, and it's important. You can't let that go.
Yeah.
And then you have the innovation front, like what are you gonna do tomorrow? And then the third one is, and it's getting more difficult, the foresight of what's happening, because we don't know. Like, just last
Yeah.
Friday, something happened, right? If you're in a business within this context, suddenly something happened, right? And how
Yeah.
can you be strategic? And it's more challenging than that. So the little ways that I'm trying to help my clients when I'm coaching them is to really set up a time. The first one is to intentionally set up a time to be strategic.
Mm-hmm.
In Google, they do this 20% of the time. They do some. So
Yeah.
I have a client from Google, like she was saying that they're encouraged to have 20% of their time to do something strategic, innovative, right? It's a challenge, but
Mm-hmm.
they're encouraged, and I find that really great. Another example, and I think I've read this in the book with Dory, was Dory Clark was saying that, Jeff Bezos of Amazon plans for 7 years. Like, who plans
Yes.
for 7 years, right? So these
Yeah.
are some of those things that our leaders can do. And in a more tactical way, I guess blocking a time every Friday, whatever day you want, 2 to 3 hours, just work on your your very top strategy for the year. One or two. What's those key that will really make 80% difference to your work? And whether it's your mental well-being, whether working with a colleague, or whether a big project or transformation, put a time. And also, I forgot to say before that, is really asking your stakeholders, what does success look like? And
Mm-hmm.
then focusing on
Mm-hmm.
that. What is success, right? So if you know what is success and you've acknowledged with your stakeholders, internal and external, then you all agree that, okay, this is the strategy we want to go, and then agree on it, and then set a time to do it. And I know every week seems like a lot, but you know what, Manbir, I've worked with some of my clients. Having that consistency of setting a time to really think is so powerful, because
Absolutely.
sometimes they don't really have any output for that particular session, but the thinking that
Mm-hmm.
goes through help them when this problem comes up. Does it make sense? So
Yes.
so they were thinking
Yes.
about it, but they didn't do it, and then suddenly this problem come up, and she goes like, "Oh my god, I actually thought about this. Okay, this is the plan." So that's so
Yes.
interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
were working
Absolutely.
on some
Yeah.
models, and then it came
Yeah.
up when
Yeah.
she needed it. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that when you're strategic, it happens because you set time for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
And that
goes.
plan, that plan, as you said, that may not be a foolproof plan, but when you are spending that time, having that intention to spend time on strategy, you're just kind of trying to connect those moving pieces, right? Those pieces are always moving. They might be moving more or moving less, right, with respect to
Exactly.
long-term strategy and short-term strategy. But when you are actually, all having a time every week, it's really an awesome way to. It's really, I think. Uninterrupted time if you set up, it's really an awesome way to connect those dots, connect those pieces, which might help you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially now that we're working complex and then encouraged to work online. There's a lot of
Yeah.
tools that you can actually use, like mind maps, like
Mm-hmm.
Mural and Miro. And as I said, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
complete it, right? But if you set a
Mm-hmm.
time every hour, you sit down with your team, you do a brain thumping, because you know how our brain is divided into two, right? You have the creative side and
Yeah.
then you have the structural
Yeah.
side. So stop the structural side, put the creative side on. There's no bad ideas. Put everything in there. Have everyone flesh it out, and that's where creative ideas come out. And then when you want to launch
Absolutely.
a product, you go back to your thoughts and you're like, you know what, we thought about this, and then you go back
Yes.
there, right? Because you're prepared for it. But it's
Yeah.
difficult to look at a blank page and say, okay, what's our strategy now, guys? Right?
Yeah. That doesn't work like this.
Doesn't work like that. There's a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um
And this creative side you talked about, Ren, I think you'll agree with me that doesn't activate in when you are in pressure. That activates when you are really relaxed, and when you know that there's no timeline. I don't have to get this strategy document out by end of the weekend, so then
yes.
it works, but it doesn't work under so much of pressure.
It doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people might disagree with me. You can share, but that doesn't work for me at all. Like, we have to, for us, for both of us, Manbir, right? We have to have some creative hats on. We do some writing, but all our writing came from a lot of ideas. Like, when I'm running, I think of something, I put it in my phone, and then I can make that strategy in another plan. And then that situation comes up, and I think of it, right? But
Yeah,
unless I
yeah,
do those thoughts clear my head, that's not gonna happen. I also wanted, you said something earlier, Manbir, that I wanted to mention. You said something about when you're planning, it doesn't have to be the full plan. It's this little ideas that become great ideas, right? There's
yeah.
also a saying with the Stoics that, yeah, beginning with the end in mind, like planning for the future doesn't mean that you're gonna be succeed. But guess what? Not planning for the future actually makes sure that you don't succeed,
Don't succeed. Yeah, yeah.
right?
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
that's a good one. I was like thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah, and another interesting thing which you said, I just wanted to reiterate to the audience was asking the right questions. I think making a great strategy, the raw material is of course intention, time, and also a capability of a leader to ask the right questions to the stakeholders and himself or herself.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, so true. Like really asking, like digging deep, and
Yeah.
someone called it rigorous thinking. I really love that thinking, like rigorous, like asking. And you know what, some people are kind of uncomfortable to say or ask a question because of fear of that they
Mm-hmm.
don't understand. But if you come from, and again, this is a growth mindset, Manbir. If you come
Yeah.
from a situation where you have different cultures, hi Sunil, you have different cultures and you have different thinking, it's actually natural to ask, what do you mean by what you said phrase? Because
Hmm.
if you're coming from different cultures, it's just a different thought. So I think that thinking is quite important. I also want to share with you something that happened yesterday. I had a coaching client yesterday, and I was using a framework for one of our coaching, Manbir, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
regular framework, right? But
Yep.
because I was just showing that framework and asking questions, they came out with a new strategy for their business. And this took like several meetings, and I don't think we will have this great strategy of theirs yesterday if we didn't meet the last four times.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay. Yeah.
idea got cultivated, and it's actually the strategy was thinking about ways of partnering with a client differently, not
Yeah. Yeah.
knowing what the future is and not knowing what the current needs of the clients would be. And for
Yeah.
me, that was
Yeah.
quite powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that with the audience here. And Ren, I think the most important thing we talk about is setting up a time. And as you and me work with leaders, we practically know that many leaders complain that they don't have time. They get so caught up in execution and the heat of the day that they don't have enough time for strategic thinking. What would you suggest to those kind of leaders?
You know, can I just share something that I read in a book by Professor Hawkins? So this
Sure.
conversation
Peter
actually,
Hawkins.
yes, yes, Professor Peter Hawkins, because I'm doing something coaching with him. This
Yeah.
conversation actually happened in a real uh, board, oh, not board, leaders, direct reports to the CEO, right? So the CEO said, look, guys, I want you to spend 20% of your time in strategic thinking every day, not every Friday, let's just say a day, this number of hours. Obviously, all the leaders, they're GMs, right? They have 800 people, 1,000 people. They go like, we can't do that. We're too busy. Okay, well, bring me your calendar. Let's all sit down and explain to me what are all those meetings that you cannot drop because it's more important than being strategic. You
Yeah.
know, you guess what happened, right?
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
they were able to create a time,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
right? They were able to create
Yeah.
a time. So I think it's really looking at our calendars and saying, what needs to go. Because strategy is also like saying no to things that's not important, right?
Perfect. That's such an important thing you have brought. Saying no to things that are not important to you, to organization's purpose, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also think, Ren, that looking at your calendars at the same time, sometimes having an accountability partner, discussing this also help as a leader.
Yeah, totally. I think whether it's a coach or another thinking buddy or
Yeah.
your team. Actually, that's what happened in the real life scenario, right? In the team, they all sat
Yeah.
down and said, "Well, let's all review your calendar." And some people are
Absolutely.
quite precious with that, right? I'm like, I'm not going to show you my calendar.
Exactly. And it's a vulnerability, right? You have to be vulnerable to your team, to the accountability partner, and get out of your comfort zone if you really, really want to think strategically.
Exactly. I mean, also, I've been in sales for the last 5 years or so. I call it the sacred hours because one of the most important thing with salespeople as well is whether you're a leader or you're a middle manager or you're just starting out, is really carving out a time to think where you want to go, what accounts are you going to run after, what's the most important for you, what will give you 100% of your revenue, right? And it's the same thinking with a country manager, right? When I was a country
Yeah.
manager, I was always thinking what will give me the best results for what I wanted. And then you focus on that.
Hmm.
And then you say no. Unfortunately, you have to say no to other things that doesn't align or will take more time. And that's strategy for you. Because if you focus on everything else and then not win on anything, then that's when problems comes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I get your point. Yeah. Cool. And I just want to bring the focus back to the audience. Thank you so much for all of you who are joining us live. Do write in your comments or questions you have on in the comment box on whichever channel you're watching us. And Ren, so I want to bring little bit of today's context here. You know, in today's volatile and dynamic environment, how do leaders take risk and volatility into consideration while thinking strategically, whether it's long term or short term?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, my dear. And I think that's part of being in a growth mindset, right? Um,
Ah,
the people's ideas about risk and effort and recognize that it's a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the point, right? It's a
Yep.
risk. So everyone agrees that it's a risk, and having that support system around you, like the stakeholder, whether it's the board or your other internal stakeholders, and everyone agreeing, okay, are we gonna do this, and agreeing that if we do this, it's a risk, and that's just so far that you can do, or you say, well, we're not gonna do it because it's so much of a risk, and this
Mm-hmm.
is something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can relate to this question about there were some deals that I had to work on. This is like 30-40 million euro deals, right? And
Yeah.
you would know, I mean, the companies would know, okay, that's a risk if we do it, but we think we're gonna do it, but everyone agrees that it's a risk, so it's all good. I think the challenge is, or the problem arises when you don't know that it was a risk, and then you get thrown off,
Mm.
right? You get thrown off and you go like, why didn't we see that happening? um
Yeah.
I think that's the most difficult one. But if you know if it's a risk and everyone agrees with you that it's a risk and you're all going out for it, then
Yeah.
that's still something that's acceptable. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you go out on risk, that's the issue, right? It's like the stocks, right? If you're in a risky situation, the value of returns are quite high, but the value
Mm-hmm.
of failure is quite high as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good to talk about this risk beforehand if somebody can foresee it, because you're at least talking about it. You might not have a foolproof plan for it, and if you are not talking about it, I think, believe me, you have a bigger risk.
Yeah, yeah, I know, like that. Oh, coming to that, I think, I don't know if it's connected, Manbir, but I think talking about risks also aligns with psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
When, especially when you're in a leadership position and there's a risk, but you're the only one who knows about it at the moment. There's two things that you can do: either you talk about it, or you just have so much fear that you don't want to talk about it. So that's another point, right? Like, it's actually good to talk about, as what you said, it's actually good to talk about the risk, because you know what it is, you can prepare for it, and if it happens, you know that it happens, and you'll deduct it. Like,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been into this, big telcos, right? They would go out on a risk, and then they would say, okay, how much is that risk? Okay, 20 million. Then I go to the CFO, can we take that hit? But they
Yeah.
calculate it. But what's the return? 200 million. Okay, we can take that risk. But they make decisions, and your CEO is with you, and it's tough. But I think you're right. Talking about it and having that conversation and a safe place, instead of it's your fault, it's more of like, how can we make this work?
Yeah,
Conversation.
yeah, yeah. That's a great point, and thank you so much for highlighting that point. Psychological safety, I think, that's a great point to have in any team. But yeah, of course, when you are thinking strategically, you should not have everybody saying yes, 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 yeah, you're right, kind of a people. You should have people who feel psychological safe when they are saying no and asking the difficult questions.
Oh my God, that's another topic, Manbir, because a lot of the CEOs are very dominant, right? They
Yep.
have to be, because they're leaders, they're warriors. They have to, but at the same time, they don't know the effect of being too dominant on people. And sometimes people is like, I don't want to talk, I don't want to say anything because I might sound stupid, but actually you're on the right path, and whatever you're seeing, your CEO doesn't see it. So how would the CEOs encourage people to talk if you don't have the psychological safety around you, right? So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a good point. And great leaders, I think that one of the best, great leaders are when they have a group of great people around them.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Thank you. As as we are coming closer to the end of our show, so there's a question here, Ren, which is coming. I'm just reframing the question for you. That how does managing up and down impact the leader's ability to strategize?
Okay, when let me rephrase that a bit. When you're managing up and down, it means
Yeah,
okay. If I'm a middle manager, I have to take care of my CEO, and I'll also take care of the people below.
absolutely. You have to justify that strategy down also, right? And you
Yeah,
have to be in alignment with somebody on the up also.
yeah. And the question is how can you be strategic, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this will answer your question, but I actually wrote a piece on that on LinkedIn last Monday,
Oh.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, how to manage up. That was the piece that
Mm-hmm.
I wrote. I think it's important to sit down and talk about what is the issue itself, and and does it really have opposing views, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And once you've sat down, because I don't know the details of the question, it's validating your people. So if I'm a middle manager and there's a decision from the C levels to that will negatively impact my team, then you need to sit down and ask, okay, what will be the impact, and hear out your people. We have, listening will go so far, because
Yep.
just listening and validating, and once they start talking about what the real issues are, sometimes you'll be really surprised that actually the issue that they were thinking of is not actually the issue. It's not actually going to be an issue. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's going to be a real issue, but there's something that can be done about it. And then you can meet halfway.
Yes.
So again, it's a lot of open communication and then conversation. But by the way, I'm not saying it's easy. I totally believe that this one of the most difficult job of a manager or a leader is taking care of his people, of her people, and then still acknowledging the stakeholders, right? But open
Yeah.
communication and having this discussion, this brainstorming. Okay, how can we be better? And everyone putting on all of their ideas. I think that will really help. And if there's a solution that you co-create a solution with your team and with your stakeholders
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
some alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ren. That's a perfect answer, I guess. Working on yourself and then listening to other people, and that listening, asking questions, being that perfect person in between requires a lot of work on yourself also. You have to be more aware, listen, be calmer. So I guess that is also required, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not
Yeah.
it's tough. I
Yeah.
mean, we're having all of these conversations. I hope it's helping everyone, but we're not saying it's easy, right? That's why we're in a growth mindset. Uh,
Yep. Yep. And that growth mindset is kind of you have to check again and again whether I'm thinking from the growth mindset, time growth mindset or not, because we tend to
totally.
go back to the fixed mindset very oftenly.
Yes, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that's such a good point, Manbir. I think people forget that it's not a normal, or it's not easy, right? Like you actually move from one to the other, and sometimes someone has to catch
Absolutely.
me, like you'll catch me, Ren. No, this. Oh, okay. I'll move to the growth mindset.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to be aware, and as we said, an accountability partner or somebody where you can become vulnerable will really be of great help. Thank you so much, Ren. It's a beautiful discussion. I'm really enjoying this discussion. And
Me
thank you so
too.
much for sharing very valuable insights. And I'm sure it is helping a lot of the audience, all the audience, and whosoever will watch the recording. I'm sure it is going to help those people also.
Thank you so much, Manbir, and to everyone who stayed. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you,
Thank
Manbir.
you. Thank you everyone for joining us live. And if, as I said, if you're watching this as a recording, thanks to you too. And I'm sure you must have got a lot of value about strategic thinking from this conversation. and keep implementing these learnings, keep working on yourself, be more self aware, and see how can you implement these learning in your situation, because everyone is different and every situation is unique. Thank you so much, and see you all again in the next episode of this series. And thank you, Ren. Bye bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a great day. See ya.
Bye.